for school systems outside of our area who may not have access to grant money like we do here, what is your advice to them that maybe they can still be implementing these kinds of ideas into the way that they teach or the way that they deal with students when they maybe feel like they need to take disciplinary action? What advice do you have for them to kind of implement these same practices?
So the big ideas are: be intentional about making time to come together and build relationships at the staff level and then in your student level too. So if you spend the first 2 weeks in your classroom building a shared culture and letting the young people inform what the rules of the space are, setting the behavior expectations, figuring out ways that they can say, hey Megan, you're kind of acting wild, you need a timeout, so that they can help check you and you can check them, and coming to agreements about that, and then being really consistent in holding those agreements as a collective. That'll go a long way for the entire rest of the school year. And similarly, if administration makes sure that staff has time to come together and do that same thing together, then it really alleviates the feelings of being in a silo, being alone, and the camaraderie really helps alleviate burnout. Another thing is making sure that we're not just using our policies because that's the way we've always done it, that we're looking and listening to what young people are telling us that they need and letting them help inform the way that discipline is handed out, and helping them challenge what they might think they know, because I've also heard young people regurgitate what they think adults want to hear or what they've always been told. Well, I'm just a bad kid, so I need to be punished. And at Deep, we don't believe that anybody is broken. We believe that everybody's got unique funds of knowledge, comes together with something to offer. And so it's especially important to allow the people who are most affected to help create the culture and the rules. So when we talk to teachers, some of the things that they've initially identified that we want to build out are workshops around mindfulness. So when something happens in a classroom, and this happened to me, that touches something deep down that causes an emotional reaction in me that really may not even be about the student, that we understand what's going on and how to recognize that and kind of regulate ourselves. And with a stronger community at the teacher level, there also might be moments where I need to tap out and I can tag someone in so that we have a moment to take a breath and then respond in the way that we really want to. Mindfulness is one. Another is including young people in our curriculum and letting them inform the work. So how are we teaching lessons that are building on our young people's lived experience and expertise so that they can be content experts and have ownership over the classroom and over the culture, and so that we're making sure that while we're teaching to standards, we're linking to young people's lives so that the knowledge sticks. When you're alone in your classroom, it can feel like everything's happening in isolation. And especially as an adult who's standing in front of a group of young people, we feel like we are supposed to have all the answers. And sometimes we don't. And there's a lot of power in being transparent with our young people, because transparency builds trust. So when teachers can come together and kind of talk shop and say, this is a thing that happened, here's how I dealt with it, I really wasn't sure what to do, and then other teachers can offer their support and other strategies, then it normalizes what happens all across the country when anybody is trying to lead a group of other folks. And then everybody feels better supported to try new strategies, and also knows who they can talk to for support. You know, maybe so-and-so is really good at working with this particular student. So can I talk to him and figure out the ways that he engages with this student, you know, through basketball or through talking about this meme, you know, and connecting on that personal level to then help achieve the academic goals. So when we talk about addressing race, class, and other bias, first of all, it's just having conversations around it. So in Savannah in general, we live in this false binary that there are white and black people and not many folks in between, but we have growing populations of Latinx folks and Asian populations, and so we're not used to having lots of conversations about how that may impact the way that we see people, influences our values. And so DEEP takes a very explicit anti-racist stance, and so we want to make sure that those conversations are being had. We know that there are that our boys and girls of color are disciplined more harshly than their white counterparts, and research has shown that it is not because, and this is across the nation, research has shown that it's not because boys and girls of color act worse. They're actually doing the same behaviors as their white counterparts, but they're perceived differently. They're perceived as older, they're perceived more as a threat, which is just simply not true. So in order to overcome that, we have to look at the biases that we hold. And everybody has bias, no matter what race you are. That's just a fact of life. So the key is to be mindful of that and interrogate it and figure out how that could be influencing our practices or our decision making, and then with that awareness, then taking steps to alleviate the disparity.